Hi students, this video is just a weekly update which I'm hoping to do throughout the semester as a way of keeping as well in contact with all of you as I can. But it's something new that I'm trying this year, so if there's any way you'd like to see it improve, just let me know. I'm happy to make changes and receive feedback. Just so to look back on this week, I think in general people are doing pretty well. People are completing the discussion board. People are submitting their journals. Make sure you do complete those soon though. Remember that with the semester beginning on Tuesday, we have a shortened first week, and so I gave you a little less material to do, but it does need to be completed by the end of the day tomorrow. So make sure you get that in. One thing I noticed with this class is people are completing their introductory posts with the discussion board, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of commenting going on. So remember, you need 2 comments as well to complete that assignment. So you got to do that, you got to do the journal, and then I would say let's just get it out the way and knock out that participation agreement as well. That would be my suggestion. This week coming up ahead, the second week is actually quite an intense week. It's partly why it's important for you to get a good start and make sure you finish up everything that's required for week 1. This week we're basically setting the context for the rest of the course, especially setting the context for the first half of the course and our study of ancient Greece. And so that means that we're covering a lot of material about a lot of different societies. And so just as a warning, this week you're probably going to need to spend more time on this class than you will on your average week in this class. I expect the work that's required this week and the material that you have to take on, I expect that to take a little bit longer. So just to be aware of that, this is going to be an intense week, but it's not necessarily going to be a typical week for this class. What are you going to be doing? Well, there are going to be videos that I have recorded on MediaSite. Now, I posted, I think, an email about this earlier, but just to clarify, I'm recording the videos on MediaSite. Once those videos are recorded, you can go in and see them, but I'm moving a little ahead of us just in case, as in I'm moving a little ahead of where the course is at the time, just because who knows what's coming down the line as we get into the semester. So what I'm doing to make sure that you're watching the right lectures is that I'm copying the link for the lectures that you need to watch and putting them in the weekly module. So although you have that link to the MediaSite page on the homepage where you can go back and you can rewatch any lectures, I would advise that when you're just watching the lectures for the first time and you're trying to stay on pace with the class, that you just use the weekly modules. Go to the weekly modules tab, click on that week, you'll find the links to the video lectures within that week as I record them and as I post them there. So that's just a kind of clarification. Go to the lectures through the weekly modules page rather than through the MediaSite link on the homepage to make sure you're staying in step with the material. That's my advice. Because we're covering a lot of different societies this week, you have a lot of documentaries and documentary style videos to watch. There's one on ancient Sumeria, which is pretty fascinating. There's one on the pyramids, which is a little bit crazy. It's a little bit provocative. It was, in fact, so provocative that I even put kind of a disclaimer clarification about it. Some of the claims in this documentary are incredibly provocative, and it gets crazier and crazier as it goes on. So it's a warning, it's a little bit fringe. You guys are established students, you should be able to see that something's a little bit fringe and not be damaged by it forever. But I really like it just because of the camera work and because of the way that the documentary talks about the pyramids and the way that the pyramids were constructed. Now, again, a disclaimer, they are trying to make the pyramids sound as mysterious as possible. And so sometimes they're exaggerating some of their claims a little bit. But it is interesting to see, and I think also it's interesting to study the documentary and to think about this question when we're thinking about the ancient Mediterranean. Why is it Egypt that always has this air of mystique about it? the mystique of the pyramids and the pharaohs and the tomb of Tutankhamun. We have none of that when it comes to the Greeks. So what is it about the Egyptians that makes them so mysterious? What is it about the way we see Egyptian civilization? And hint, the way we see Egyptian civilization is very much shaped by the way the Greeks saw Egyptian civilization. Why do we see Egyptian civilization in this way? You would never see, I don't think, a documentary like this about the Parthenon. So what is it about the pyramids? What is it about the ancient Egyptians that's so fascinating? So keep that in mind. Then the last one's about the Assyrian army. Pretty straightforward there. The Assyrian army was really good at what it did, and what it did was really brutal. But it's good to be aware. What I like about this documentary is there's a lot of primary source quotations. To me, it really brings out how scary the Assyrian army would have been, how scary and how efficient the Assyrian army was. Then we have a discussion board. The documents for discussion are not from either of the discussion books this week. They're from a handout that I've attached to the discussion board in PDF. I've given you 3, so again, it's perhaps a more intense week than normal. An Egyptian sort of fairy tale, moral tale, which is pretty cool, an ancient Sumerian law code, and then our first Greek text, our first experience of the Greeks. But what is it? It's the Greeks talking about the Persians. Remember what I said, that a lot of the way that our civilization looks at the Egyptians is shaped by the Greeks. Also, a lot of the ways that our civilization looks at the Persians is shaped by the Greeks as well. So that's why I've included that there. And then we have a journal entry, of course. One point on the journal entries, haven't really seen it in this section, but I know that different professors ask for different things. For this class, it's much more helpful for me. It's my preference if you copy and paste, or you just write the journal entries into the assignment space. That's easier for me than downloading an attachment. So if you can avoid attachments, that's what's most helpful for me. In terms of the material this week, we're making our move from prehistory into history. And like I said, we're establishing the context of the Mediterranean world. What's the story of the rest of the Mediterranean world in which Greece will emerge and in which Greek civilization will exercise its influence and contribute to? And so we're looking at ancient Mesopotamia, we're looking at Egypt, and we're looking at the Iron Age with Assyria and Babylon and Persia. And so what are some of the themes that we see, or what are the ways in which this material fits into the themes of our course? We see a lot of changes in terms of government. When we looked at prehistoric civilizations, it's very difficult to know how they were governed. But in this period, the material that we're looking at this week, we see that there are empires emerging. There are different models and different attempts being tried as people try and work out how to govern empires. These empires are sponsoring building projects, mostly fortifications, but also some temples. We see that there's a change of approach in government in that our early governments seem to have been religiously led. But increasingly, the people's immediate concerns are less about the gods and more about other human beings and the competition for resources and the competition for power. And so we start to see that government becomes much less about the priests who are going to offer the sacrifices and more the military chieftain who can command the army. So there's a change in role for the government that we see taking place in this time. And so religion is still hugely important. Religion is very central to this society, but it's also a little more separated from the government, more separate than it had been before anyway. We see increased economic and intellectual sophistication. This is a society in which trade is becoming more sophisticated, more diversified, as cities and settlements are becoming larger, and a society in which we see the development of writing, mathematics, and astronomy. So it is a period of great achievement, great development that is setting the stage for us to study ancient Greece and later ancient Rome.